Hello everyone. Let us move on to the next aspect of pharmacokinetics, that is excretion. So under pharmacokinetics we have seen that there are four important parameters like absorption, distribution, metabolism and excretion. Apart from that, protein binding and tissue storage also governs the pharmacokinetics of a drug. Okay, so let us consider the last parameter under pharmacokinetics, that is excretion. Okay, now coming to the definition of excretion. Okay, so in kinetics, as you all are aware of that, we study exactly how the drug moves in, through and out of the body. Okay, so absorption determines the movement of the drug into the body, entry of the drug into the body. Further, its distribution, it determines the movement through the body. Okay, and ultimately it may get metabolized or may not get metabolized. It may be bound or may not be bound. Okay, so that depends upon the characteristic features of that particular drug, and ultimately any particular drug will get excreted out of the body, that is, it will be removed out of the body. Okay, so that last process is known as excretion. So excretion, it is defined as the passage of systemically absorbed and unabsorbed drug out of the body. Okay, so it's not only the absorbed drugs, but certain amount of drug is remaining unabsorbed, like say for example in case of oral route. So when you give a particular drug via oral route, it's not necessary that the entire amount is absorbed into the systemic circulation, right? Supposing if you are administering a tablet, so it will disintegrate, it will dissolve, and whatever is dissolved, that and only that will get absorbed systemically. So anything which cannot dissolve in the aqueous medium, it cannot get absorbed. So it totally depends upon the transit also, your GI motility or movement across your GI tract. So sometimes it happens that the drug is just passed as it is without getting absorbed. Okay, so some amount may be unabsorbed. Okay, so that also moves out of the body. Obviously it has entered your body, not systemically, but it is there in the body and it moves out as it is without getting absorbed. Okay, so excretion is, it is movement of both the systemically absorbed and unabsorbed drug out of the body. Now let us consider which are the different routes of excretion. Okay, so there are different routes by which the drug can be excreted out of the body. Just like in case of administration, okay, there are several routes of administration, right? You can present the drug to your body in several ways. Several routes are there: oral, parenteral, rectal, inhaler, okay, transdermal. Several routes are available for the administration of the drug. In the same way, there are a number of routes available for excretion of a particular drug. Okay, not only the drug, but their metabolites also. So either the drug as it is may get excreted, or the drug may get excreted in the form of metabolites if metabolism is significantly applicable to that particular drug. So there are 5 main routes of excretion of a particular drug. Now it may be characteristic to that particular drug as to which route is followed by that particular drug for the excretion. Okay, so first route and the very important route of excretion is the urine. Most of the drugs get excreted out of the body via urine by the kidneys. Next route is the feces. Okay, that is the stools. So either the unabsorbed drug which is there in your intestines, or something which is secreted in the bile, because bile is secreted in the small intestine. So your drug, if it is the metabolites, it may be excreted via bile, and that may be moving out of the body through the feces. And the third route is exhaled air. Supposing if your drug is in the form of a gas or a volatile liquid which gets converted into vapors, Okay, so that may also be administered by inhalational route, as we have seen in the route of administration. So it is excreted out of the body through the exhale. Then the next route is the saliva and the sweat. So this is a minor route of excretion. Very few drugs are excreted in the saliva or in the sweat. And the last one is the milk. Okay, in case of the lactating mothers. Okay, so breastfeeding may be done by the women. So in that breast milk also certain drugs may get excreted out. Now this route, it is not much of the concern for the mother, but it is concerned for the suckling infant. Okay, because the drug which is present in the breast milk, it will enter the baby's body. Okay, so that is more concern. Let us discuss individual routes of excretion in detail. To consider the first one, that is urine. Okay, so urine, it is formed in the kidneys, as you all must have already studied the formation of urine. So this is a major route of excretion for majority of the drugs. Most of the drugs are excreted in the urine. Okay, now let us consider how exactly this renal excretion is taking place. Okay, so in case of renal excretion or excretion of a drug through the kidneys, so that is made possible for the drugs which are soluble in the aqueous medium. Okay, so whatever drugs which are water soluble in nature, or the metabolites which are water soluble in nature, all of these will be excreted by the kidney. Now the amount of drug or the metabolite which is ultimately excreted out of the body through the urine, it is actually dependent upon three processes. It's the sum total of these three processes, that is glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. Okay, now let us consider each of these processes. Okay, now before going into the details of these individual processes, let us see what these three processes are exactly. Okay, so you must have studied the nephron, right? The structure of the nephron in the kidney. So nephron, it is the structural and the functional unit of the kidneys, right? So main filtration, that is the main function of your kidney, is the filtration and urine formation, excretion of several harmful substances. Okay, so that is mainly done by the nephrons. So your blood is filtered by the kidneys, so that whatever dissolved substances are there in your blood, it will be removed out of the body. Now exactly entire amount may not be removed out. Okay, now let us consider this particular structure. This is a representation of the nephron. Exactly, this is not the structure how the nephron looks like, but this is just a representation. Okay, so you all must be aware of the parts of the nephron. Okay, glomerulus or the Bowman's capsule is the region where exactly the filtration of your blood will take place, right? So there is a filtration membrane, okay, which consists of several structures, out of which one of the part will be the endothelium of the capillaries. Okay, so blood will be carried by the capillaries. Okay, and it will be carried by the blood vessels. First of all, the efferent arteriole will enter the glomerulus, and it will form a network of capillaries inside the glomerulus, and through the wall of the capillaries. Okay, as you all are all aware of, the capillary walls have, or the endothelial cells of the capillaries, they have gaps in between, right? So any substance can be filtered out from the capillaries. Okay, so this is to do with the process of glomerular filtration. So your blood will be filtered out, but entire amount will not be filtered. Plasma proteins or your blood cells, these are not filtered out. Okay, so only the dissolved material gets filtered out, and the content or that filtrate, it will enter the first part of the nephron, that is proximal convoluted tubules. As you all must be aware of the structure. So this is the tubular structure which is shown over here, just a representation, because most of the drug secretions or absorptions mainly takes place in the proximal convoluted tubule, which is the first part of the tubular part of the nephron. Okay, further there is loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, collecting ducts and all that. Okay, so the first part is just focused over here. So this is the first process, that is glomerular filtration. So anything which is dissolved in the blood except for the blood cells and the plasma proteins, everything will get filtered over here and it will enter the first part of the tubular structure, that is proximal convoluted tubules. Okay, then the second process is the tubular secretion. So this is the one. So your drug, it may actively get secreted into the lumen of your tubules. Okay, drug as a whole. Okay, so whatever is there in your blood capillaries or systemically absorbed free form of your drug may be actively secreted in the tubule. So there is a second process which is adding to your drug being excreted through the urine. Okay, so these are the two processes which are involved in movement of your drug out of the body. So they are throwing your drug out of the body, right? Okay, then there is a third process known as tubular reabsorption. So as the name implies, absorption, meaning it is the entry of your drug into your blood. Now the word is reabsorption. That means this is not the first time absorption of your drug. Drug is already absorbed, right? It has absorbed and it has got filtered over here, and that filtered drug which is present in the dissolved form in this lumen, that is coming back into your blood circulation. Okay, that is why the term given is reabsorption, and where it is taking place in the kidney tubules. That's why that process is known as tubular reabsorption. So these are the three main processes. So out of this, if you can consider this tubular reabsorption, so this indicates that the drug is again entering into your systemic circulation, right? From the lumen, it is coming back into your blood circulation. So this is your blood vessel, right? So your drug is coming back into your systemic circulation. So this is the re-entry of your drug. Okay, so this is actually not the part of excretion, but it determines the excretion of your drug through the kidneys, okay, in the urine. Okay, why? Because this some amount of your drug, it may re-enter your blood vessels. Okay, so again that will decrease the amount of drug which is getting excreted out. So you need to consider this factor also when you consider the net renal excretion of your drug. Okay, so next, net excretion of the drug, net renal excretion of your drug, it can given by formula glomerular filtration plus tubular secretion minus tubular reabsorption. So you have to deduct this amount which is already reabsorbed into your systemic circulation. Okay, so you need to give the consideration to this process also. Okay, it's not only these two processes, but you need to deduct the amount of drug which has reabsorbed in the kidney tubules. Okay, so this is to do with the net renal excretion of the drug. So this is how it can be calculated, the amount of drug which can be excreted in the urine. Now let us consider all these three processes in detail. Okay, so coming to the first process, that is glomerular filtration. So as I have told you earlier that the capillaries, okay, so the network of capillaries is formed in the glomerulus, right? The efferent arteriole is the blood vessel which is entering the glomerulus. Further it will branch into the several network of capillaries. The walls of the capillaries, these are highly permeable. Okay, the pores are larger than what it is present usually in the normal capillaries. So here capillaries in the kidneys, they have large gaps, okay, or larger pores in them, so that any substance, okay, which is dissolved, which is non-protein bound, okay, if you can see over here, drug is present in the bound form also, right? As we have seen under the plasma protein binding, depending upon the property of your drug, drug can bind to the plasma protein, right? In the extent of binding, it is a characteristic feature of that particular drug. However, when this glomerular filtration takes place, it is only the free drug. FD is the free drug. BD, it is a bound drug. It is bound to the plasma protein. So it's only the free drug which will be filtered in the glomerulus. Okay, so free drug is getting excreted out. Whether it is lipid soluble or whether it is lipid insoluble, that doesn't make any difference because it is crossing the pores. It is not crossing a membrane. So it doesn't make any difference whether it is lipid soluble or lipid insoluble. Any kind of drug which is presented to the glomerulus, it will be filtered out, provided it is in the free form. Bound drug never gets filtered in the glomerular filtration. Okay, so now this process of glomerular filtration, it will be dependent upon these two factors. These two factors are mainly governing the glomerular filtration of your drug. That is the plasma protein binding, the extent of plasma protein binding. More the plasma protein binding, lesser will be the filtration of that particular drug. More the drug will be available in the free form, more will be the filtration of that particular drug. Okay. Next factor is the renal blood flow. Okay. So obviously, more the blood flowing to your kidneys, obviously more will be the filtration of your drug. Okay. Also, renal blood flow, if it is high, pressure in these capillaries also will be high. So that will again promote the filtration. Okay, so these are the two important factors which are governing the glomerular filtration of your drug. Lipid solubility does not make any difference over here. Okay, so this excretion of your drug in the glomerulus by the glomerular filtration, it can be governed by this particular factor, that is glomerular filtration rate. So this is how it is determined. Okay, the drug, which is the rate at which the drug is getting filtered out, it can be determined by this particular phenomenon. As you all must already be aware of this in the urine formation, glomerular filtration rate, the rate at which the filtration is taking place in both the kidneys, considering together. So how much amount of blood is getting filtered per minute, per unit time. So that will determine the rate or the speed with which that filtration is taking place. So normal filtration rate, normal GFR, it is 120 ml per minute. And as the age progresses, you all are aware of that it goes on declining. Okay, because renal functions go on declining as the age progresses. So also in case of renal failure also, the glomerular filtration rate may be low. Okay, so what you can conclude from this, your drug excretion also will be altered as per the age. So age is another factor. So as the glomerular filtration rate goes on declining progressively as the age progresses, so excretion of your drug also will go on declining as the age progresses. Also, if the patient is suffering from renal failure, if the kidneys are not functioning properly, what will happen to the filtration of your drug? That also will get affected. That also will be low. Okay, so you need to give these considerations. So these are some of the factors which are affecting the excretion of the drug. So you need to consider them when you are administering a particular drug. When glomerular filtration is a major route, or the major kidneys are the major route for excretion of a drug, and if that patient is suffering from renal failure, you need to give consideration to that. Otherwise, what will happen? Your drug will start accumulating in the body and toxicity may be precipitated. Okay, so these are some of the factors affecting glomerular filtration, and in turn these are the factors which are affecting excretion of your drug. Okay, next process which is involved is tubular reabsorption. Okay, so let us focus on the tubular reabsorption. Okay, so in the last process we have seen that the drug has got filtered out. Whatever is found in the dissolved form, unbound form, it has already filtered and it has come into your tubules, kidney tubules, okay, or the first part, that is proximal convoluted tubules. Now as you all are aware, these kidney tubules, they are tube-like structure, right? So they will have a internal lumen. The space in between, it is known as a lumen. Okay, and these kidney tubules, these are lined by certain cells. Okay, these are known as tubular cells. Okay, now your drug which is present in this particular filtrate. Now your drug was earlier in the blood. Now it has come to the urine. Now here in this particular region, your drug will encounter a different pH. Okay. Now why pH is important over here is because the process of reabsorption of your drug, that is movement of your drug back into your systemic circulation from the kidney tubules, that will have to cross a particular membrane, right? It will have to first, your drug will have to first enter your tubular cells, and then from here it will move to the capillaries. Now in this process it has to cross this membrane, right? Your tubular cells, this is lined by a membrane, right? Plasma membrane. So it has to cross that plasma membrane. So the main process which is involved in the tubular reabsorption sorry, it is the passive diffusion. Okay, so because passive diffusion is involved, we have already covered the different processes by which the movement of your drug takes place across the membrane, right, in the initial lectures. Okay, so over there we have seen that passive diffusion, it does not require any energy. Movement of the drug takes place from the area of high concentration to the area of low concentration. Now since it has to cross a biological membrane, plasma membrane, it's a biological membrane. We have seen the structure of the biological membrane also. It is highly lipoidal in nature. So lipid solubility is very important, right, for your drug. So it should be highly lipoidal in nature. One more important factor is the ionization state of your drug, right? That ionization state, again we have seen the influence of pH. So ionization of any drug will depend upon the pH where it is existing, right? Now here urinary pH, now it's already in the process of formation of urine, right? So that filtrate, your drug has now entered that filtrate, so it's going along with your urine. So the pH in this particular region will determine whether your drug is in the unionized form or ionized form, right? And both these are in the equilibrium. Okay, now since tubular reabsorption takes place by this particular process, that is passive diffusion, so obviously ionization plays a very important role. So any drug which is present in the unionized form will only be reabsorbed, because unionized form is the only form which can cross the membrane. Okay, so tubular reabsorption takes place by passive diffusion. So all of the factors which are governing your passive diffusion will also govern this particular process. Okay, so it totally depends upon the pK of the drug, the pH of the urine, the lipid solubility of your drug. So same factors will be determining the reabsorption, the tubular reabsorption of your drug. Okay, so only the unionized form of your drug is getting reabsorbed back into your systemic circulation. Concentration gradient, already it will be in this direction, because most of the drug has filtered out over here. So here in the peritubular blood vessels, obviously the concentration of your drug will be low. Okay, so obviously the drug will start re-entering, and as you all have already studied under the urine formation, 99% of the filtrate, it will be reabsorbed, and it's just only 1% which is actually excreted out. So depending upon the requirement of the body, several things which are filtered, it will be reabsorbed. So now here, this is in case of pertaining to our drug, it depends upon several factors which will govern this passive diffusion. Okay, so any drug which is lipid soluble in nature, which is filtered out, which remains in the unionized form, it will be reabsorbed back into your systemic circulation. The ionized drug cannot be reabsorbed over here. Tubular reabsorption of ionized drug does not take place. There is no arrow shown over here. Their drug is just getting excreted out. And obviously some amount of unionized drug may also get excreted out of the body. Okay, now here the rate of excretion of drugs like aminoglycoside antibiotics or quaternary ammonium compounds, these are same as that of glomerular filtration rate. Now why is this case with these particular agents? Is because these are ionized in nature. Okay, so these drugs do not exist in the unionized form. Okay, so that is the reason why here tubular reabsorption for such drugs does not take place at all. So your drug, whatever is filtered, it will get excreted out of the body. So it is same as that of glomerular filtration rate. Your excretion of your drug, the rate of excretion of your drug is same as that of glomerular filtration rate, or it will be parallel to the creatinine clearance. Okay, which actually is the term which determines the excretion in the kidneys or kidney functions. Okay, so now in this particular process of tubular reabsorption, urinary pH plays a very important role. Okay, because we have seen that the state in which your drug will exist, that will be totally dependent upon the pH where it is existing, right? We have considered this under the influence of pH on the passive diffusion, right? So we have seen that the basic drugs, they remain more in the unionized form in the basic pH. It's very important, it is very easy also to remember. Basic drug remain more in the unionized form in the basic pH, and acidic pH, these will be more in the unionized form in the acidic pH. Okay, so what you can conclude from this, over there also we had seen these implications. So any drug which is weak base in nature, it will be more in the ionized form in the acidic urine. So since it is more in the ionized form, when the urine is acidic in nature, obviously normally urine is acidic only. So any weak base which is filtered out, when it encounters the acidic urine, it will ionize more. So since it is present more in the ionized form, what will happen to the tubular reabsorption process? That will be decreased, right? So it will be less reabsorbed in the acidic urine. On the contrary, what will happen with the weak acids? Weak acids, acidic drugs are more unionized in the acidic pH. Okay, so what will happen if it encounters alkaline urine? Weak acids, they will remain more in the ionized form in the alkaline pH of the urine, right? So there will be less of reabsorption, tubular reabsorption which is taking place. So what you can conclude over here is that you can facilitate the elimination of certain drug which has caused the poisoning. Okay, say for example alkalinization of the urine. In case of barbiturate or salicylate poisoning, it can excrete the drug out. Why? Because these drugs are acidic in nature. So when you alkalinize the urine, more of the drug will remain in the ionized form. It will not be reabsorbed and it will get excreted. Okay, but what will you do in case of weak bases? Drugs like morphine or amphetamine, these are weak bases. So in that case, what should be done? In case of weak bases, acidic urine, right? In the acidic urine, more will be in the ionized form, less will be reabsorbed, so it will promote the excretion of the drug. Okay, so in case of morphine or amphetamine poisoning, what you should do? You should acidify the urine. But this particular phenomenon or of acidifying the urine, it is not practiced clinically. Why? Because if you acidify the urine, acidosis will be precipitated, and this will start precipitating severe conditions like rhabdomyolysis, cardiotoxicity, and even it may worsen the condition which is present. Okay, so that is the reason why alkalinization of the urine to excrete the acidic drug is practiced normally. Okay, because alkalinization will not hamper the patient's health much. But if you go to acidify the urine to excrete the weak bases, that will rather have the adverse effects. Okay, but this is tried. alkalinization of the urine is done to facilitate the excretion of certain drugs where toxicity has taken place. Okay. Now generally these effects on ionization, it is mainly seen with the drugs which have the pKa value in between 5 and 8. Okay, so such drugs have, the influence on their excretion is more with such drugs which are having pKa value in between 5 to 8. Okay. Then coming to the third process, that is tubular secretion. Okay, so as we have seen, tubular secretion, that is the active transfer of either organic acids or bases by utilizing certain transporters. There are separate class of transporters meant for acidic drugs and for the basic drugs. Okay, so these relatively non-specific transporters are available. These are the two, OATP and OCT. These are the two transporters which are present in the proximal tubules. Apart from this, there are efflux transporters which throw the drug out of the cell, PGP, and MRP2 is one more transporter. Of course, we have considered these transporters under active transport also. So tubular secretion, mainly it is an active process, so energy will be required over here. So your drug will be secreted in the urine. Over here the drug has got filtered. So in addition to that, certain drug which is present in the free form, that may be actively secreted into the lumen of the kidney. So this is your drug. Okay, so it enters your tubular cells. From here the transporters will be present in the wall of the tubular cells and the drug will be transported into the lumen. This is how the drug will be secreted. The tubular secretion of the active tubular secretion of your drug may take place. Now this free drug is in the equilibrium with the bound drug, so only whatever is free drug, that will be excreted by the process of tubular secretion. So from this what you can conclude is, if the clearance of any drug, the renal clearance, if it is more than 120 ml per minute, this is the GFR, right? So if it is more than this, if the rate of excretion of your drug is more than this particular value, what it indicates? It indicates that some additional amount of drug is getting excreted out by this additional process, that is tubular secretion. Okay, so it will be sum total of both the glomerular filtration plus the tubular secretion. So that will determine the excretion of the drug. Okay, now this particular active transport of the drug across the tubules, okay, this one, active transport. So obviously what it will do, as the drug moves out, it will reduce the plasma concentration, right? So it will reduce the plasma concentration of the free form of your drug, okay, in the tubular vessels, so in the blood vessels which are present near the tubules. So as more and more free drug is getting secreted in the lumen, what will happen? Plasma concentration of free drug is reduced, and what we have seen just now, both the free drug and the bound drug are in equilibrium with each other, right? So there is a particular fraction of drug which is present in your blood, it remains in the bound form. That's what we have seen under protein binding also, that a particular percentage of your drug is remaining bound to your plasma proteins. So as this drug is actively secreted out into the lumen, what will happen? Free drug concentration is reduced. So obviously this equilibrium will get disturbed. So your body will not keep quiet. So it will try to balance this equilibrium. So whatever drug is present in the bound form, it will be released free. So it will try to balance that. So what will happen? As the drug is secreted by the tubular secretion, more and more bound form of the drug is released. Now in the case of glomerular filtration, what we have seen, bound drug cannot be excreted by glomerular filtration. That's what we have seen, right? So that's the hindrance for the excretion of the drug. Whereas here, that's not the hindrance. The binding, protein binding is not the hindrance for excretion of the drug by this process of tubular secretion, right? So whatever free drug, when it is removed, automatically the bound drug will be released to balance this equilibrium. Okay. So this is to do with the actual processes of the tubular secretions. Now some of the examples of the drugs are given. Okay, now this organic acid transport utilizes OATP. So this is operating for certain drugs like penicillin, propanacid, uric acid, salicylates, indomethacin, sulfenpyrazone, and so on. Okay, several drugs are excreted, acidic drug. Whereas the organic base transport, that is OCT, it is meant for transport of drugs like thiazides, amiloride, triamterene, furosemide, prokinamide, cimetidine. So as you can see that a number of drugs utilizes the same type of transporter, right? So same transporter may be utilized by more than one drug for its transport across the membrane. Now one thing you should keep in mind over here, so this is to do with the examples. So one thing you should keep in mind that both these type of transporters, acid transporter and the basic transporter, so both these type of transporters, these operate bidirectional. Bidirectional meaning what? They operate in both the directions. Like say for example, this is your kidney tubule, this is the lumen, okay, and this side is your blood. I am not showing any cells over here, tubular cells over here. Consider that these are the tubular cells which are located over here. So these particular transporters are operating in both the directions. Okay, either the substance can move from blood to lumen, as in case of penicillin, it can move from blood to the kidney tubule. So here tubular secretion is actually taking place. But if you can see this transporter, what is happening to uric acid? It is moving from the lumen of the kidney tubule into the blood, right? So it is actually entering your blood circulation, uric acid. Okay, so such type of transporters which are present in the kidney tubules, these operate bidirectionally. That is, in both the directions they can transfer the substrate. Mainly your drugs or your xenobiotics or the foreign substances, these are secreted, whereas the endogenous substances or the endogenous substrates which are actually generated in the body, such type of substrates which are filtered through glomerular filtration, these are actually reabsorbed by these particular processes. Okay, so though we have considered the tubular secretion of particular drug, there are certain substances which can even enter your blood circulation by using the same type of transporters. Okay, now let us consider the further interactions which may be possible. As I have told you earlier that the same transporter may be utilized by more than one drug for transport, right? Okay, so as it is getting utilized by more than one drug, there may be competition between the two drugs for the same transporter. Okay, so here I have just quoted one example, probenecid. Okay, probenecid, it is an organic acid which has high affinity for this transporter, OAT. Okay, so what will happen, since it has very high affinity, if you give another drug along with this, obviously probenecid, it will be preferentially utilizing this transporter. So it will not allow the second drug to utilize that particular transporter. So rather it will block the active transport of other substances like penicillin and uric acid. Okay, so this is what we have seen earlier, lumen of the kidney tubule, and this is the blood. Okay, so certain substances, generally the endogenous substrate, it gets reabsorbed, that is, it comes back into the blood by utilizing this active transport, whereas certain drugs like penicillin, of course there are many more, they utilize this transporter for active tubular secretion. Now when you give penicillin over here, what will happen? Since the probenecid, so probenecid, it has high affinity for this transporter, right? Okay, and this particular transporter, it can act bidirectionally. So it is throwing penicillin out of the body, it is excreting penicillin, whereas it is producing reabsorption of the uric acid. So when you give proben acid over here, what will happen? It has more affinity for these transporters. So it will start utilizing this transporter. Instead, what it will do? It will inhibit the transport of these two substances. Okay, so it is inhibiting this transport. So what will happen? Proben acid is inhibiting the excretion of your drug penicillin, and proben acid is inhibiting the reabsorption of uric acid, right, into your blood. So both these processes will get inhibited. So in turn, what you can conclude over here, there is an interaction which is taking place. Okay, so if you give proben acid and penicillin together, what will happen? Proben acid will get excreted out, and instead penicillin will remain in your blood for a longer period of time. So it is increasing its stay in the body, because proben acid itself is inhibiting the excretion of the penicillin. So it is an intentional interaction to prolong the action of penicillin. Whereas what is happening to the uric acid? Uric acid transport is also inhibited. So what will happen? Uric acid excretion in the urine will be increased. Okay, so it will not get reabsorbed. So instead it will get excreted out of the body. So conditions like gout, wherein the uric acid levels are high in the blood, so this proben acid will help in excretion of the uric acid. So that's how proben acid produces uricosuric action, that is, it promotes the excretion of the uric acid from the body. Okay, so this is how the interactions can take place. So apart from these, there are several examples of drug interaction which may take place because of the competition for this tubular secretion. So salicylates, it can block the uricosuric action of proben acid. Just now we have seen proben acid increases the uric acid excretion. So salicylates in turn will block the action of proben acid, or sulfenpyrazole. Also, it decreases the tubular secretion of methotrexate because of the competition for the same transporter. Also, proben acid can decrease the concentration of nitrofurantoin in the urine, because nitrofurantoin, it is actually a urinary antiseptic, so its concentration in the urine will be reduced. Also, another action we have seen just now, that it increases the duration of action of penicillin or ampicillin. Okay. Another interaction of proben acid is that it impairs the secretion of methotrexate also. Okay. Next interaction is sulfenpyrazone. It inhibits the excretion of tolbutamide by competition for the same transporter. Quinidine, it decreases the renal and biliary clearance of digoxin, okay, by inhibiting this transporter. PGP is inhibited by quinidine, so obviously the excretion of digoxin will be reduced. Okay. So this is to do with the interaction, some of the examples of interactions which are taking place at the kidney tubules. Now this particular tubular transport mechanisms which we have seen just now, these are not well developed at the birth. Okay, in the small infants it is not well developed, so excretion of the drug is not developed actually. So as a result of this, what will happen? The duration of your drug may be more. Your drug will remain in the body for longer period of time in the infant. Say for example penicillin, cephalosporins, aspirin. So their duration of action is longer in neonates because it is not excreted at the same rate as that of the adults. Okay. So these systems, they slowly mature during their infancy. As the child grows, these processes will be matured and they will be gaining the normal rate. Okay. So also renal functions again progressively decline after the age of 50. Okay. So in these cases also you should consider the excretion of the rate of excretion of the drug. It will be lowered in case of elderly. Okay, so you need to consider these factors also when you are prescribing certain drugs to the neonates as well as to the elderly patients. Okay, so this is to do with the excretion of the drug via urine. The next route is feces. So as I have told you earlier that the part of the drug which remains unabsorbed, so that may get excreted in the stools, in the feces. Apart from that, certain drugs may also be excreted in the bile. Okay, by utilizing some transporters, active transporters, like for organic acids, and especially for the glucuronide conjugates of your drug. Okay, OATP and MRP2 are utilized. For organic bases, OCT is utilized. Okay, for lipophilic drugs, PGP transporters are available, and for steroids again there are non-specific active transporters are also available. So these are the different types of transporters by which the drug may be actively secreted by the liver in the bile. Okay, now usually the drug which has larger size, okay, the drugs which molecular weight more than 300, these are mainly excreted in the bile. Large size of your drug, that will get excreted in the bile. Okay, but as the drug gets excreted in the bile, it moves through your small intestine, it will enter your colon. Now in your intestines there are certain bacteria which are present, right? So these bacteria secrete certain enzymes which can break these conjugates. So glucuronide conjugation, okay, by this process the drug is converted into a metabolite, right? It's a phase 2 reaction, very important phase 2 reaction. So this glucuronide conjugate or the metabolite of your drug, it once it is encountered by these bacteria, they release certain enzymes and they can deconjugate that particular drug from the glucuronic acid. Okay, so what will happen, it will be more clearer with the help of this particular picture. Okay, so your drug which is bound with the glucuronic acid, as we have seen in the presence of UGT, so this particular glucuronide conjugate with the help of transporters, it will be secreted in the bile. Okay, so through bile it will enter your gut, that is your small intestine. So once in the intestines, it will encounter the bacteria. So bacterial deconjugases will break this conjugation. Your drug conjugate with your glucuronic acid, it will be broken down and the free drug will be released over here. This is what we have also considered under the metabolism also. Okay, so here the drug is again present in the free form and it is in the intestine, and that's the site where the absorption of the drug takes place, right? So here now the drug has been made available again in the free form, so it will be again reabsorbed. It will go to your systemic circulation, it will go to your kidneys, again it will to the liver, again it will be conjugated, again it will be released into the bile. Again here bacteria will deconjugate them, free drug will be released which will be reabsorbed. So this particular process is known as enterohepatic cycling of your drug, which we have already discussed earlier. Okay, and ultimately the drug may be excreted via the kidneys then. Okay, so this enterohepatic cycling, it it increases the duration of action of your drug. Okay, it makes your drug to remain in your body for a longer period of time. So it is not excreted, but ultimately it may get excreted into the feces also. Some amount may get excreted into feces. So here some of the examples of drugs are quoted, like erythromycin, ampicillin, rifampin, tetracycline, oral contraceptives and phenolphthalein. These are the drugs which attain higher concentration in the biles because they are mainly excreted in the bile. Apart from this, there are certain drugs which are excreted directly in the colon. So there are certain transporters which will secrete your drug directly into the colon, and through feces it will get excreted out of the body, like anthracene, purgatives and heavy metals. So these are the examples of drugs which are excreted directly in the colon. Then next route of excretion is exhaled air. Okay, so as we have seen in the route of administration, inhalation for gaseous and volatile liquids. So such type of drugs, for example general anesthetics or paraldehyde or alcohol, so these types of drugs, they will be eliminated by the lungs through the exhaled air. So that will be dependent upon the partial pressure of that particular gas or vapor into your blood. Okay, their lipid solubility is also one more factor which will determine the excretion of that particular drug. Okay, So this is to do with the excretion in the exhaled air. Next route is the saliva and the sweat. So these are minor route, as I have told you earlier. So certain drugs may get excreted in the saliva as well as in the sweat. Now in this case, mainly in case of saliva, your drug is, since it is excreted in the saliva, now saliva is something which you may swallow, right? Okay, it's not always that the saliva is produced and you throw it out, you spit it out. So it doesn't happen. So most of the times you swallowed the saliva, right? So when your drug is secreted or excreted in the saliva, you will swallow it, right, along with your saliva. So again it is remaining in your intestine. So it has come back to your intestines. So again it will be subjected to the same fate as the orally taken drug. So along with saliva it will go to the intestine. From there the intestines will absorb your drug again. Okay, so that may happen. Now examples of drugs which are secreted by these route include lithium, potassium iodide, rifampin and heavy metals. So a limited number of drugs are available for excretion through this route. Then the last route is milk. Now the excretion of the drug in the milk is not important for the mother, as I have told you earlier, but it is important for the suckling infant, because the infant will be administered with that drug, right? Okay, so that's very important. Okay, when you should consider this drugs administration to the breastfeeding mother. Okay, because ultimately if it is excreted in the breast milk, it will reach the suckling infant. Now the process by which the drug is excreted in the breast milk is by passive diffusion. So obviously all the factors which are governing this passive diffusion will come into picture. So one of them is the lipid solubility, obviously. So more lipid soluble the drug, more are the chances of excretion in the milk. Again, protein binding. So less protein bound drug can cross better. Okay, bound drug is not available for that process. Again, pH is an important factor. Now milk has a lower pH as compared to plasma. Okay, so what you can conclude from here, any drug which is basic in nature, that will remain in the unionized form in the plasma as compared to milk, right? So milk has a little bit lower pH. So what will happen, basic drug, they can easily reach the milk, and over there they will encounter a little bit acidic drug. It's not actually acidic pH, but as compared to plasma it is towards the acidic side. So once this basic drug reaches the milk, it will get converted into the ionized form, so it will get excreted out. Okay, however, by excretion by this particular route is not very much significant. Only a very small amount of drug may reach, and very few types of drug get excreted via this particular route. But nevertheless, it is better to avoid certain administration of certain drugs to the lactating woman. Unless it is essential, it is better to avoid the administration of the drug to lactating mothers. Now there are certain examples of drug which has produced deleterious effects in the suckling infant. So these type of drugs are contraindicated in breastfeeding. That is, they are not supposed to be prescribed to the lactating mothers. These include aspirin, BZDs, that is benzodiazepines, atropine, caffeine, chloramphenicol and allopurinol. You are not supposed to administer these drugs to the breastfeeding mothers. Okay. So